the wall, eh? Okay, now you're talking my language.
You ever drunk Baileys from a shoe?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mother, for replacing the baby aspirin with LSD.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over the mountain?
All right, welcome back to the View from C-Deck. It is week 7 in college football, and it is time to gamble. And last week we didn't have a great week as a whole, but I righted the ship after my skunk week the week before there. 5, I went 3-1-1. Jason struggled mightily, 1-4. Casey went 2-3 though. We're all eking. Jason was leading the way. Now we're all kind of bunched up again in our standings. But we're ready to beat Vegas down, I think, this week. This is going to be the best week of college football, though, so far by a lot, except for our Buckeyes aren't playing, but that's okay because that means we can enjoy all these stress-free and just root for chaos like most teams do. But there can't be too much chaos when you have 3 matchups featuring undefeated teams from P5 conferences. Going to be a huge, huge week and a lot of big games. But we're going to start in the Big Ten since we don't have the Ohio State to start with. Our 2 rivals, well, our one wished they were our rival and the rival playing in Ann Arbor. 7-point favorites are the Wolverines over under a 52. We can pick that one too since we don't have Ohio State this week. But Penn State goes there to Michigan. Sean Clifford on the road. They've had a big win already though against Auburn this year, even though Auburn's not that great. Michigan has looked pretty beatable or pretty average in most of their games against the Big Ten teams so far this year. So how do you see it going down Saturday in Ann Arbor?
You mean against college teams? Because before they played in the Big Ten, it was high school.
Was it even high school? It might have been Pop Warner.
Yeah. This one is so tricky. I almost picked it, but I stayed away. I think it's going to be one of those coin flip games, but I think in the end, Franklin craps his pants and Michigan ekes it out. It is 7 points, so it's like, man, I almost feel like that's exactly what it's going to be. They're gonna be up 7. Franklin, Penn State's going to be driving towards the end and just completely crap down their pants, like a draw when it's 4th and 3. On their 40-yard line, like they did against us a couple years back.
Actually, I think that was a read.
Was it a read? Okay.
Yeah. Just Chase Young was back there so fast it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Penn State wins this outright, to be honest. So I'm definitely taking the 7. I can see Michigan winning close. I don't fully trust Sean Clifford on the road, especially, but I'm not sure that this Michigan defense is anywhere close to what it was last year. They have talent on the D-line, but nothing close to Hutchinson. And I just think that Penn State's defense is definitely good enough to hold Michigan in check. They've been pretty good all year long, and especially in their bigger games. And I haven't seen McCarthy do anything that actually wows me. Like when they made the move, and I've read the dirt sheets are saying Cade McNamara's transferring now. So they better hope McCarthy doesn't get injured at any point in the season that they're playing a walk-on at quarterback. But I like the Lions. You did scare me, though, when you talked about James Franklin, because you're right. He does tend to shit his pants in these games, make some boneheaded decision at some point or burn a timeout when he shouldn't. But I like Penn State, and I like the under on this over-under of 52. Something close, something like 24-21 sounds good to me.
I'd go with the under 2. They're 2 of the, at least statistically, best defenses in the whole country. So I could see it being like 21-17, something pretty low.
Yeah, they both are pretty solid. And it puts the winner has a great shot at making the Big Ten championship game. They just got to beat Ohio State later. That's easy. That's it. Elsewhere, that's one of Haas's handies as well. That's one of my picks and Haas's handy. We both have Penn State plus 7. Also at noon, the Kansas Jayhawks, fresh off of the loss though, have one of your ballsy pick lines of the week, I think, because they're going to Oklahoma to play Bedlam there, and they're somehow 9-point dogs after a very solid performance against TCU last week, a game that was very exciting down to the wire. And Oklahoma was out there getting a 49-0 shit stomp hole put on them by Texas the week after getting a 31-point beat down from TCU. Somehow they're 9-point favorites at home against a ranked team. Make it make sense, Casey. What does Vegas know?
I thought about that one too, but then it's almost like they're basing it on recruiting rankings. That's all I can figure. I mean, they're thinking Kansas had their day, apparently, but that spread is very odd because Oklahoma has looked like dog shit, and Kansas was a play or two away from being undefeated and possibly being a top 10 team right now.
Yeah.
And yet they're 9-point dogs.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. That is the ballsy pick. So I'll go with the ballsy pick, and I'll take Oklahoma -9.
You are picking them.
I'm going with it just purely based on that. What does Vegas know that I don't?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the definition of a ballsy pick for sure. Even though it's funny to say picking Oklahoma -9 against Kansas is a ballsy pick, but that's where we are right now.
A lot of times you think it's ballsy the other way, that they're like, wait, why is it so low?
But I mean, it would be normally it'd be like, huh? I'm taking Oklahoma all day -9 Kansas, but now it's the opposite.
Yeah. Speaking of Big 12 games, though, with a bigger line than you would expect, Texas 17-point favorites at home after a pretty nice win for them last week against Oklahoma. Your boy Quinn Ewers back, the mullet, trying to help drag your ass across the line on your parlay. And look good doing it, though. You're probably feeling a lot better now. And I think you told me Texas is the favorite now to win the Big 12.
They are a slight favorite. I mean, they only have the one loss. So the way the Big 12 works, if you finish top two, you're going to, come back in the end and have a redemption. But, I mean, since Ewers coming back, I mean, they just look like a different team. Even when he was in against Bama, they looked great. And they shouldn't have lost that game in overtime. Was that Texas Tech?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I told myself I had to replace us as a pick in this since we're not playing, and I'm thinking I'm going with Texas in my parlay for the season, 8.5 wins. And then I saw that spread and I hesitated a little bit. What'd you have it at 17? I had it at 16. 17?
17 right now.
All right, that's fine. Iowa State, though, I mean, they're coming off of a 3-game skid. They've lost 3 in a row. They're going downhill. Texas is going up. So I think it's trending in opposite directions. And 17 sounds like a big number, but if Texas plays like they did against Oklahoma, I mean, Oklahoma's not good, but I don't think they're that much worse than Iowa State's playing right now.
Yeah. I'll take Texas too, because Iowa State, I feel bad for the people of Iowa being subjected to the offenses of those schools in that state, because they both are putrid. They cannot either one can score on anybody. So I'm with you. Texas takes this one pretty big. I'll say something like 38-14, something like that. Sounds good. Another big nooner that both Jason and I have picked, and we both went. You would think this is one of your ballsy lines. Minnesota, 6.5-point favorites at Illinois, who is coming off a whooping of Wisconsin, while Minnesota just lost they had a bye last week, but lost their previous game to Purdue. And Illinois is ranked, and they're not, but it's 6.5-point favorites because Illinois' quarterback, DeVito, may be out for the game. Interesting, though, another strength on strength. Illinois did struggle to move the ball at all on Iowa last week, but luckily Iowa's so pathetic on offense that they went their third game of the year, scoring 7 or fewer points. Third game of the year this year. Over under 39.5 in this game, by the way. But both the Haas and I, our junk handy is Minnesota minus the points. Ibrahim back in action all the way. I think they just had a bad game, I think, against Purdue, to be honest with you. Tanner Morgan threw 3 picks, not something you are going to see happen that often. He's usually pretty reliable. And Illinois, they have a great rushing attack, but Minnesota's run defense is actually pretty stout too. And we saw that it is stoppable last week when Iowa did that. So I'll take Minnesota by a touchdown. The half point not being there is what gives it to it for me.
Yeah, if I had to, I'd probably pick Minnesota too, especially since I didn't realize that about their quarterback being out. Without knowing that, it did seem like one of those ballsy picks because Illinois, other than us, you could argue they're looking just as good as any other team in the Big Ten right now. But not having their quarterback, I understand that spread. And they didn't have Ibrahim for that loss, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's a completely different team with him in there. But I'd say 6.5. That's right there, but I'd go with them.
Yeah. I think the half point there is huge when you're evaluating that game. Then 3:30, back on CBS there. Even though we hate the SEC, it's kind of fun to go to old Rocky Top for a top 6 matchup. Number 3 Alabama goes to play Tennessee. Tennessee 7.5-point dogs. I think both of us picked this game. I know I did. You picked this one too, and we both picked Tennessee plus 7.5. Now, I will say this feels like watching Bama struggle last week. I watched a lot of that game. They turned the ball. They fumbled like crazy, which is just not something that's going to happen every game. But it's just one of those things that seems like this is a game Saban throws the big Saban dick down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, why did I pick against Alabama? It's 21 at the end of the first quarter.
I was thinking that going into last week that all the talk in the offseason with Jimbo and Saban, I'm thinking they are going to truck A&M like nobody's business. But Bryce Young didn't play, so maybe if I knew that going in, I might have picked A&M because it was like a 21-point spread, something like that.
24.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but also they haven't really looked like the Alabama we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, I don't think, throughout the whole season. So Tennessee looks legit. I mean, they're right there with us in the best offense in the country. I think they're clearly the second best.
Yeah. And they have a sneakily good defense too, statistically. Yeah. I don't think they look great. They've had, they gave up 33 to Florida. So they're not amazing, but they're like top 25 statistically. So they're not that bad. That's what maybe in the half point hook. I mean, I see this. They struggled now twice this year. It wasn't just they had Bryce Young against Texas and they should have lost that game.
Mm-hmm. Plus it's at home. It's 7.5. It just caught my eye. And we don't even know if Bryce Young's going to play. I mean, he most likely will, I'm going to say. But he might not be 100% either.
He might not be, and they haven't looked that great with him, not against anybody with a pulse. But yeah, it's good. Huge game, though. Huge game for the national landscape, especially if Tennessee wins, because you know how the committee treats Bama. So it's bad news for everybody else if Tennessee wins this game.
I can't believe I'm saying that, but you're right. Like, I always want Bama to lose, but it actually could. It doesn't matter for us. All we have to do is win out, but we're fine regardless. But it could theoretically, there is a scenario where 3 freaking SEC teams could get in if Tennessee wins this game.
This is the one that makes it happen. If Tennessee loses, then it's not going to happen. But
yeah.
Okay. Let's not even think about that though. And we have another matchup of undefeated teams. TCU, fresh off their big win, game day game against Kansas last week, hosting Oklahoma State. Horned Frogs, 3.5-point favorites right now. Not one. I think there's one you picked.
Yep, I did. I had it at 4, but that's fine.
You can get 4 on this.
In this one, they both look like really good teams right now. But it was almost my disbelief in Kansas and how close that game was last week between them and TCU that made me not believe in TCU quite as much as Oklahoma State. And that spread is so small. I mean, 3.5 that half point might scare me a little bit. But I'm thinking Oak State wins this one outright.
Yeah, I mean they get the half point, so the hook's there for you. I like that pick for you because I'm gonna go with TCU though, man. Their offense, both offenses are rolling, but TCU's played a little bit tougher schedule so far. Although their defense, I'm going back and forth on this now. I'm gonna go with you with Oklahoma State because their offense is really really highly ranked too, and TCU. I don't know what it was. I like Kansas's offense, and I thought it looked better once their backup quarterback went in. Well, it did do better. They scored way more points because he was a little more accurate throwing the ball. But their run action that they do with like both their running backs in is pretty nice, and they run all kinds of options and stuff. And that gave TCU all kinds of trouble. And Oklahoma State's got a very athletic quarterback there, and he's been there forever. Yeah, I'll take it because of that half point. I'm back to it. But TCU, if they keep going undefeated, the Heisman race will be tighter with their quarterback, with Duggan. He had a great game against Kansas.
I will say, touching on the Heisman real quick, if Tennessee beats Alabama,
Aiden Hooker,
that is who becomes the clear second place Heisman favorite, I'd say.
Another 3:30 game. This one, the Haas picked NC State getting 3.5 at Syracuse, who's also undefeated. NC State just has the one loss to Clemson. Should be a barn burner and what's the last time that Syracuse hosted this big of a game in the Orange Dome up there? I like the hook though. He picked NC State plus with the 3.5. I like him with the hook there too. Syracuse had a lot of close games, including one against Purdue earlier this year that I actually did watch quite a bit of, and I think they should have lost that game. So I'll take the Wolfpack, but it's mainly because I think it will be actually that close.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Syracuse to be honest, but NC State hanging with Clemson. I'm not sure how good Clemson really is this year. But when I did see some of that game, they look legitimate, and that spread's so tiny that I'd go with NC State.
Yeah. All right. Game I'm guessing you didn't even have on your radar here, but old James Madison cracked the top 25 for the first time in school history. Just in their first year in FBS, they are undefeated and have made it at Georgia Southern, only 11.5 point favorites. I'm going with James Madison. They're top 5 defense right now statistically, although it's not really strength on strength. Their run defense is like only giving up like 40 yards a game. And Georgia Southern, though, is a passing team now, throwing for over 300 yards a game. So that could be why this line is so low. So I didn't think it was that weird of a line. So I'm taking James Madison there. Just minus 11.5. They've dominated pretty much everybody they've played except for Appy State, who's not a bad team, as Texas A&M well knows.
I couldn't tell you a thing about either one of these teams, so I'm going to go with the opposite of what you said and go with Georgia Southern.
Oh, that's ballsy pick territory right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Ballsy pick territory. All right, what other game we have here? USC and Utah. Game that had a lot more hype until last week when UCLA blew up that hype and crapped all over and ended the hopes of my preseason pick to go to the playoff. Utah got spanked. Now they're somehow, though, this is ballsy pick territory, minus 3.5 in this game. Yeah, I believe you went ahead and went with the ballsy pick here.
I did, and that is 100% why. I mean, all signs point to USC just, rolling in this one. I think the line has something to do with the whole season. We've touched on it previously. They've had so many turnovers. It's a little bit of luck factor going on. Utah was a lot of majority of quote unquote experts picks to win the Pac-12 coming into the season. Mm-hmm. Lost that first game. Then ever since then, they've looked great. But then they lost last week. So they got that, I don't know, they got that chip on their shoulder. They're still telling themselves they want to redeem themselves, make their season, a win. So most people would say USC is going to cover. I mean, they're underdogs, so they're going to pick USC. So that's that ballsy pick. Pick the opposite. And I went with Utah -3.5.
All right. The Hoss, of course, went with his all-time favorite team, USC, well, besides Vanderbilt. But he couldn't pick Vanderbilt this week. They're playing Georgia.
Yeah. Well, he could have. It's like a 40-point spread. I almost did.
I'm going to go with Utah, too, because of the line thing, because I think they're more physical on the lines, even though they got out-physical bad by UCLA. But I'm actually just a UCLA believer now after I've watched their last two games, the game against Washington, too. I think they're actually like really effing good, and Chip Kelly's back, unfortunately, for the Pac-12. It looks like LA is back. Actually, it's not the Pac-12. It's now the Big Ten.
Yeah, Pac-12 for one more year, right? Or is it next?
Yeah, next year, I think.
Okay.
Here.
Well,
So
there was some reports, maybe you don't know, and I should,
UCLA.
that UCLA was like trying to get out of that whole contract.
They're not. It's the Cal, because they're part of the California university system. Them, Berkeley, everybody else, and they're trying to basically hold them. They're basically trying to get them to bring Cal with them. Is what's happening. They're trying to get that to happen. The Big Ten's like, nope, don't think so. Don't want them. Well, we may end up with them. I don't know. Down the road.
You got freaking Rutgers, so whatever.
Yeah, we don't need Berkeley. Who cares? All right, Clemson and Florida State though also at night. Clemson's been rolling lately. Another cover last week. I got them on the cover train here against Florida State team that I don't think is that good, and took a good L to Wake and got me an easy dub last week with Wake. So Clemson -3.5, even though it's on the road at night. I still think they got it. They got more momentum, and they're just a better team than Florida State right now. And I think Clemson does. I think that there's a very good chance they're going to go undefeated and be in the playoff again. And back to what everybody wanted: Ohio State, Bama, Clemson. You know how it is.
I really hope we don't have to play them again, just because the opposite revenge factor. But anyway, I kind of struggled this week to find some games that I was confident in, and this was one of those ballsy ones yet again. Like Clemson looking like easy playoff pick, playing against lowly. I mean, it's Florida State, historically not a lowly team, but recently they are, and they're only 3.5-point favorites. That screams bet on Clemson to me. So that's why I went with the opposite with Florida State.
I listened and bet on Clemson.
Yeah.
All right, one last game was the Haas pick this one, and that's actually another top 25 matchup, like the sixth one we talked about. Mississippi State is going to Kentucky and giving up 6.5, but he took Mississippi State anyway. They have looked really good lately, and it's funny, Chip Kelly at UCLA and Mike Leach now at Mississippi State at their new schools, really been struggling their first couple of years. Everybody's like, oh, it's not working where they're at. They're washed up and done. And now their teams are out rolling people and making them look bad. So, yeah, Mississippi State -6.5. Though I'm going to go with Big Blue because I don't actually believe in Mississippi State yet as a team. And it's on the road. 6.5 is quite a bit to be getting at home for another top 25 team. And I don't think Kentucky's particularly great, and they shouldn't be ranked right now. They get in some great SEC bias to keep themselves in after two straight L's, and including a bad one against South Carolina this week. But I think they keep it close enough, and I'll take 6.5.
Yeah, I'd go with you there. I think it's going to be like a field goal game either way. I don't know, maybe Kentucky even wins it, but if they're 6.5 dogs, I'd go with Kentucky.
Yeah. So as we do at the end of every one of these podcasts, any changes in your big four for the college football playoff? I think I'm still rolling right now with Bama. I mean, Bama's the one I'm actually the most worried about now for whatever reason. But I'll still go with Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Clemson.
Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't say I'm worried about Bama is because they basically they're about the only team that gets two chances, because
No matter what.
like they can lose a game and they're not going to lose to a team that's going to trump them to make the SEC title, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to lose, it's going to be to Tennessee or potentially some random. Well, Auburn sucks, but it's a rivalry game. But even if they lose to Auburn, they're still making.
Not happening this year.
So I guess my point is, even if they lose to Tennessee, then they're still going to play Georgia, pissed off because they lost. Saban's going to be up their asses to play the best game of their lives. So if I'd say between Alabama and Georgia, I think Georgia is less likely to make it than Bama just because of Tennessee.
Maybe. But I don't think anybody makes out the Big 12 undefeated. UCLA could definitely make it out of there. I guess they would get to play Oregon too. Then in the Pac-12 championship, most likely at this point.
So you're saying
if there's an undefeated Pac-12 team, then the SEC probably only gets one in, assuming Clemson also goes undefeated, which it looks like they will.
I mean, I'm a firm believer. I don't care who you are. If you go undefeated and you win a Power 5 conference, you're in unless there's 5 undefeated champs, which
won't happen.
Will not. It's like a less 1% chance that'll happen. So I don't like if I guess it would have to be in this scenario like I guess Georgia goes undefeated, loses to Bama in the SEC title, an undefeated UCLA's in. I mean, that's just how it should be.
Yeah, and it will be. And I think there's a good chance they do, but maybe not. Maybe Utah, maybe they round robin beat each other with Utah, USC, and then whoever's highest ranked would go. It'd probably be USC at that point. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Real quick, though, I texted you about this, and you might not know the answer, and I'm curious to look it up, and I don't even want to say the words, but if us, Penn State, and Michigan all beat each other, and we all end the regular season 11-1 with 1 loss, each beating each other, who the hell makes the Big Ten title?
I meant to answer you about this because I meant to look it up, and I totally forgot. And I've looked this up before. It goes to like the winning percentage of the teams we play in the West.
Ugh.
Now that I'm about it, yeah, which we have not played a good schedule over there.
Not at all.
No,
Penn
but I mean,
Minnesota.
because we got Northwestern, which is going to be dead last in that division, almost for sure.
And Wisconsin doesn't look good either.
In Iowa, Wisconsin, Iowa, and yeah, Penn State's got Minnesota. Michigan's got Illinois, but maybe they lose that game.
We're not looking good then.
Yeah, the tiebreaker's not looking good for us. So let's just win them all, which way we will.
Yeah. I remember saying this to you before that I could have sworn it was who was highest in the playoff ranking, but you told me that's not right anymore.
Yeah, I think this happened last year. We were looking at the scenarios, and yeah, now it's the strength of the.
If that's the tiebreaker, that is just silly.
It is. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. It's whoever had the hardest schedule, basically, is what you're saying.
But they should look at non-conference then too, if they're going to look at that. But I guess
10 conference.
It's more than 10 conference championship. Then what? Fucking stupid.
Well, when is the Big Ten ever scheduled to try and win a national championship? The answer is never.
Yeah.
Is why they're going to start doing it now, though. I do believe we switched over to the the Big Ten schedule, 1 year out instead of 5 years out, and put us with Michigan State, Penn State, and Michigan last 3 games of the year 1 year with actually COVID blew that up, but that actually did happen. We were supposed to do that.
I think we'll eventually go away from divisions too, which I do not like because we might play Michigan back-to-back weeks, which would not be cool.
Unlikely, though. Very unlikely.
Of us playing back-to-back?
Yeah. If we have that many with 16 teams and we have no divisions, somebody else is going to go undefeated in the conference.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking as it is right now.
Now, once USC and UCLA get here, I mean, there's so the teams don't play each other enough, so there'll be somebody else to take their spot.
True, and it's looking like we're getting the 2 best teams from the Pac-12. So
We are. Chip Kelly. I mean, if you think about it, Chip Kelly and Lincoln Riley. Of course we did.
Yeah.
All right, but that'll do it for us this week here on View from CDEC, our Week 7 gambling lines. Go out there, win some money, shake your bookie up. Actually, plead for your life because he's probably broken your kneecaps already if you've been following us. I'm sorry. Follow us, subscribe. Twitter, we're at View from CDEC. Give us likes, comments. You can just let us know how shitty we are for the most part, but not me from last week. That was good. All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, guys. Whoa, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.
A rich man's world.